We certainly appreciate everyone braving the weather today. I understand 50 years ago the weather was similar to what it is tonight, and I guess in February that would be expected. We have people from as far away as Fairhope, Alabama. They get the award for traveling the furthest. And we've got a really great evening planned for everyone. We're going to start off with a toast and then dinner. And then after dinner, Kathy has put together just a really fantastic show, slideshow that we're going to show. And then we'll invite anyone else after dinner too, if they want to offer a toast or any remarks, to do that. And then we'll cut the cake. It'll be just like wedding celebration all over again. But before we get going on the toast, I just wanted to, February is a busy month in the Poppy Hannah family, and I wanted to acknowledge a couple other February celebrations as well. On Tuesday of this week, Joey DePoppy, Matt's son, he celebrated his 16th birthday. This is a long list, you might want to hold your applause. The day after that, on February 3rd, my son Steven celebrated his 18th birthday. I can't believe it's all already. On February 21st, Matt is going to be 46. And on February 28th, my little Pete and Emily is going to be 16. I can't believe that either. So we've got a lot of birthdays, and I know they don't want to overshadow our 50th anniversary couple, but also celebrating their 11th anniversary today is Kathy and her husband Clay. And one final, I didn't overlook, just 2 weeks ago, Jack and Joan Ardrey celebrated their 52nd wedding anniversary. So busy month in our household. So, my father, of course, was a Toastmaster. My Uncle Jack was a Toastmaster. We're under a lot of pressure tonight to do a great toast. So we wanted to come up with something that was original, unique, but not too much over the top. So since they were married 50 years, 5 kids, we're each going to do a decade. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and whatever we're calling the double zeros. So each of us will cover the decade, and hopefully you'll take a walk with us through 50 years quickly, and we'll honor them with a great toast. So I will start with the 60s. And with any young couple, their first decade is always, of course, a decade of firsts. After they got married, they, of course, took their first trip together. They took a great trip through New Orleans, New Mexico, Arizona. I've heard many stories about that over the years. Some I can repeat, some I can't. Soon after that, of course, they had to have a place to live. So they moved into their first place. Those of you that went to the Mass, it's right at Immaculate Conception down the street on Walbridge Avenue. They bought a duplex there. And then they had their first child, a son. That would be me, Vince. Followed quickly by their second son, Dave, and their third son, Matt. A lot of firsts. So continuing with the first, after that, of course, they had these kids. What did they do? They bought their first station wagon. A 1964 Buick, which can only be described as a Sherman tank with tires. If you remember that. Then, of course, we got these cars, and all these kids, what do? They bought their first house together. On Oak Ridge, house we all remember fondly that we grew up on. It was a great house. And then, right after that, of course, then they had their first daughter, Kathy.
All right.
And it's only January of 1965. I mean, the early part of the decade was a busy time for them in the style of that era. Well, they went through 65, and the rest of the decade was pretty low-key. They went through, started raising kids, thought everything was settled, but then they moved into the 70s.
All right, the 70s, as you know, it's the disco era. Dave has requested I do it in rendition of the That's as good as it's going to get. The 70s, last but not least, Jody came along. You know, she couldn't be a baby boomer like the rest of us, had to hold out from Gen X. But, so she started the 70s, and then a few other milestones. My dad was promoted to both sergeant and lieutenant during the 70s with the Toledo Police. Vince had graduated from high school, was the first one to start college, kind of end the decade. My grandparents celebrated their 50th anniversary during the 70s. And aside from the milestones, there's a few good memories that I have, just things we did as a family. Our trips to the Chicago area to visit Uncle Jack and Aunt Joan, our cousins. We had several of those. We took a trip down to Atlanta as a family. We got to see Henry Aaron play with the Atlanta Braves. The Toastmasters parties that my mom and dad used to host at our house, and I swear one of them, I remember my dad swallowing a live goldfish. I don't know if that was a dare or a little too much to drink, I don't know, but I somehow remember that. And then finally, like the blizzard of '78, when our whole family, we had to have the longest driveway in the city, I think, and we all had to shovel in shifts, and some of the bigger memories, and then even just some of the little things. My mom, every Sunday making sure we get to church, my dad and the kids packing up and going to get my mom from work in the evenings, and my dad helped me build a little dam for a science fair project in 7th grade. So even the little things, I guess, is kind of how I remember the 70s. The kids young, doing a lot of trips with the family, and just a lot of good family time. So with that, Matt will